Albert Fish. Known by many names, including the Gray Man, the Boogeyman, and even the Werewolf of Wisteria, Fish's heinous crimes terrorized New York City in the early 20th century. His chilling actions would not only horrify the public, but also shape the criminal psyche of future generations. Prepare yourself, because this is a tale that delves deep into madness, brutality, and the unimaginable acts of a man who was more monster than man. Albert Fish was born on May 19, 1870, in Washington, D.C. His early life was marked by tragedy. His father, a railroad worker, died when Fish was just a toddler. His mother, struggling with poverty, was forced to place him in an orphanage. Life in the orphanage was harsh. Fish would later recount that he had witnessed and even suffered physical abuse, experiences that seemed to shape the man he would become. This formative period of his life marked the beginning of a disturbing relationship with pain and suffering. Though he would eventually leave the orphanage, Fish's formative years left deep scars. Many have speculated that this early neglect and trauma played a key role in the development of his pathological tendencies. But even Fish himself would later claim that the real turning point in his life came when he began to experience strange urges and fantasies, which would become all-consuming over the years. As an adult, Fish moved to New York City. He worked various jobs, many of them as a house painter or handyman. But on the surface, he blended into society like anyone else. He was quiet, even unremarkable. But beneath this outward appearance, Fish harbored an uncontrollable obsession with pain, punishment, and grotesque fantasies. By the time Fish reached his 40s, his dark desires had escalated. He would later admit to the police that, during this time, he was drawn to the act of self-mutilation, using needles and objects to cause himself pain. He even inserted pins and needles into his own body, seeking a bizarre form of sexual pleasure. But these acts weren't enough. Fish began to fantasize about the pain and suffering of others, particularly children, and that's when his true nightmare began. Between 1924 and 1932, Fish began his reign of terror. He targeted vulnerable children, orphans, runaways, and those who wandered the streets. But it wasn't until 1928 that his most notorious crime took place. On May 28, 1928, Fish abducted 10-year-old Grace Board. Grace had been playing with friends in her neighborhood when Fish, posing as a friendly stranger, lured her away with the promise of taking her to a party. It would be the last time Grace was seen alive. Grace's family immediately reported her missing, and the city was soon on edge. The search lasted for weeks with no leads. But it wasn't until nearly 2 years later that the unimaginable would be revealed. In 1930, 2 years after Grace's disappearance, her parents received a letter that would forever change the course of history. The letter was written by Fish, and it detailed, in gruesome detail, how he had abducted and murdered their daughter. The letter described how Fish had tortured and cannibalized Grace, further revealing his dark and twisted inclinations. This letter was the breakthrough the police needed. Thanks to this, they quickly zeroed in on Fish, and after further investigation, they arrested him in late 1934. The full scope of his crimes began to emerge. Once arrested, Fish didn't shy away from the horrors he had committed. He readily confessed to the murders of at least 5 children, though some speculate the number could have been much higher. In addition to murder, Fish admitted to engaging in acts of cannibalism, torture, and even mutilation of his victims. He described his crimes in chilling detail, revealing how he took pleasure in the suffering of others. Fish's trial took place in 1935, and it captivated the public. His defense team argued that Fish was insane, claiming that his bizarre sexual fetishes and grotesque acts were evidence of his mental instability. However, the prosecution painted a different picture. They argued that Fish was a cold-blooded killer who knew exactly what he was doing. Fish's behavior during the trial was odd. He often seemed detached, almost as though he wasn't fully aware of the gravity of his actions. But the jury ultimately found him guilty of murder, and on January 16, 1936, Albert Fish was executed by electric chair at Sing Sing prison. The case of Albert Fish left a deep scar in American history. His gruesome crimes and cold, calculating nature shocked the world and left an imprint on the public psyche. The term boogeyman would forever be associated with his name. Albert Fish's story is a grim reminder of the depths of depravity some individuals can sink to. His actions, while incomprehensible, offer chilling insight into the mind of a serial killer. As we reflect on his legacy, we are left with an unsettling truth. Some monsters were the face of an ordinary man. If you found this story chilling, give us a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime content. And remember, always stay vigilant and stay curious. You never know where the darkness lies.